welcome back to a weekly manga podcast book club series where we deep dive and explore the monthly Big Gangan series, The Apothecary Diaries by Natsu Hyuga, Tokushino, and NekoKurage. My name is Bruce, and I am the proprietor of the White Gray Black YouTube channel, and am joined, of course, by my constant co-host, Gautam.
Hello, hello.
So this is going to be a new deep dive and discussion series that we're doing this year. Alongside, you will keep getting Gachiakuta ones and potentially some others popping in here. But I'm happy to start this. This is a series I've been really interested in for lots of years. Before we get into that, let me do a quick little introduction of what this manga is. So, The Apothecary Diaries, or Kusuria no Hiturigoto, is a novel. It's a novel series. It is a light novel series. And it is, of course, also a seinen manga and an anime. These are all by author Natsu Hyuga. The manga in particular that we're going to be reading here started in 2017. It is illustrated by NekoKurage and has Itsuki Nanao as its co-author. It is based on a fictional representation of Imperial China, and the series follows Mao Mao, an eccentric girl, and her mystery-solving skills as an apothecary in the Imperial Palace. This week, we, of course, are covering Volume 1 of the series, which is chapters 1 through 4. And a little brief warning before we get into discussions. This is a seinen. This is an adult manga, which means some of the topics and discussions may be of an adult proclivity. So if you are not comfortable with those topics, or if you aren't old enough, please go check out Gachiakuta. That's for most all ages. So
it's like to add on to that description just a little bit. It's like if you combined the show House and Sherlock Holmes. It's also very much a medical mystery detective series through and through.
Yeah, which is very very interesting in these first couple of chapters that we read. Gato, why don't you tell me, you have a little bit of history with this, right? And then tell me your history with the series, and then tell me how you liked Volume 1 of Apothecary Diaries.
Yeah, sure. I read this like so long ago. Maybe back when it was coming out. I read, I think, 2 volumes or something. I love Apothecary Diaries, or maybe 3. I don't remember fully, but I love Apothecary Diaries. I think Mao Mao is like an amazing protagonist. Mm-hmm. She makes the series, of course, and I'm sure you felt the same way reading Volume 1, that she's just kind of a blast to see on the page. In terms of what I remember, just since this is our read through, I really only remember Volume 1, but I do remember everything from Volume 1. I don't know what happens next, really. I have like scattered memories of the plot of the series, and I don't really remember any of the characters. So it'll be pretty fresh for me too.
Okay, cool. So what did you think? What did you think about Volume 1 then? Going back and reading what you remembered, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a great start. I think it's just like how I remembered it. I actually remember it not liking chapter 4 as much, like the last act. But I liked it more this time. But we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
I think the first 3 chapters are just so incredibly solid that, I don't know. This is a really good time. How about you, Bruce?
Yeah, it was great. So this is one of those things that I'm usually pretty down with things that everybody says are really good. I know they're going to be really good. I had accepted before I read this that I was probably going to like it. I didn't know what I was going to like about it or what made it likable, so it still kind of surprised me there. You're absolutely right that Mao Mao is a great main character. Like, essentially, Mao Mao and Jinshi and their interactions carried this first volume on their back. Not that anything else around them was bad, but their parts particularly were very good, very interesting. She's an excellent main character, set up excellently in chapter 1 that we'll talk about. And I really, really liked it. And I'm really curious to see how, if the series does sort of like big, kind of multi-chapter, multi-volume mysteries, or if it's, week to week, or if it's a combination of both, or stuff in the background, or I want to see kind of how it's going to navigate that going forward. But I'm really interested. The art is great. I really liked it. It was just really solid. I won't say that it was like, it's not anything revolutionary, I guess, or like new. It's just an extremely well executed kind of good mystery story with interesting, fun characters. So yeah, it's just good. So
I think one thing I appreciate about Mama as a character is how egotistical she is, and that being kind of what makes her a fun character and her character flaw. but I like that she's egotistical in a way where she doesn't kind of put down the courtesan profession. And as you saw, she's like raised in a brothel. But I like, she feels above not just all the women there, but everyone, in kind of a hilariously charming way.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. We can talk about it because I think a lot of that is shown in chapter 1, the way that they introduce her character, which I think is excellent. And we kind of learn everything we need to know about her. So
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So, this first page immediately to me, it gives you so much. This is immaculate storytelling, in my opinion. It's like, we see a girl, we can tell that she's sort of like carrying clothes. We're told she's a maidservant of the inner court, and all she's really thinking about is meat skewers, which is, she's thinking about low-level street food, which tells us that, she's not some high lady who's thinking about delicious treats. She's thinking about low-level street food. She's poor. We kind of know where she's coming from. And she's interested in the basic pleasures of life. She's not literally, looking at the sun or the moon and wondering what the fate of the world is. She's just like, damn, I'm hungry for street food I used to be able to get, and I don't have any.
And you kind of get the feeling that she's not into this like royalty surrounded life. She just
whatever she's doing bores her
stuff
because her mind is wandering. Yeah. So it's really interesting to kind of break down a single page and realize how much information you're getting for it, even if it's all kind of subliminal. But when I opened this first page and read it, I was like, wow, I actually, a lot about this character from a single page, and basically all of it, is reinforced later on and becomes true. So, Curse of the Inner Court, these are our two main characters, Mao Mao and Jinshi, who, like I said, were definitely the sort of highlight characters for me in this. A little bit of backstory on Mao Mao. She was picking medicinal herbs in the forest. She gets picked up by, I was made off most inconveniently by kidnappers. She was kidnapped.
I like how casual.
It's funny that she's very casual about getting kidnapped and being sold as a slave to the Imperial Palace. And she has like part of her money, we learn later, is like getting paid back to them that she makes. It's like, she's very kind of like blasé about it, where it's like,
it sounds like
they
were like slavers, right? Like slavers
essentially,
that just took people and sold them.
Yeah, I think maybe it, later on we kind of learned that I think that they are like quote unquote pretending to be her family. So she's like sending money back to her quote family, and it goes back to the slavers or whatever. That's like part of the deal. I think it's an underhanded thing, but
I think they, they were pretending to be her family so that they were getting a cut of the money. Okay.
Or just that she was sending a cut of her money home and the slavers, had some thing to take part of it. But yeah, she's essentially making like half the money she would be making, and half of it is going to the people who kidnapped her and sold her to the Imperial Palace. So,
and she mentions that she's like she's like undervaluing her own skill set in the public eye on purpose, so her boss doesn't make more money off her making more money. Her boss being like the slavers who sold her off. She just doesn't want them getting paid.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not going to reward them for their. Yeah, she's smart and underhanded. It's great. And this is another thing she's kind of giving us this voiceover, if you will. Here, it says the stifling reek of cosmetics, beautiful robes, fake smiles. She does not like this imperial court. Like, this is not for her. She's very much like, not like street urchin, but she's kind of like from the streets, right? Like Mao Mao's from the streets. If we're gonna compare it to the prestigious ladies.
I actually took this as like more so as something she is used to. It's like the kind of dog and pony show of what it means to be a courtesan, because she was raised in a brothel too. So she's like used to the cosmetics, the fake robe. I mean, the robes and the fake smiles.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an angle part of it too.
Yeah.
And this we kind of get the thing that sets off our first big story point here, which is that Mamo can read, and basically none of the other helpers or courtesans or anything, like a few of the more sort of high end ladies can read. Like I think we'll learn about a couple more of them, but like basically she is the only kind of low level. She's like a clothes washing maid, I think, essentially. And she's like literally the only one that can read. We learn later.
Yeah, exactly. because nobody gets like the low level maid role if they have like academia in their skill sets.
Yeah, because if they knew that, you'd be like, oh, you can work on copying books or whatever.
Yeah.
She also mentions, and this is another kind of interesting revelation about Mao Mao's character. She says, she's kind of talking about how she's more knowledgeable and stuff. She says, despite this, maids like myself here, on rare occasion, gone on to become low-ranking concubines, which is kind of like a status elevation for her. And she looks kind of wistful about it and then says, like, she's like, all you need is a pretty face. And she basically looks at herself, she's like, I have freckles, I'm flat. She's like, I'm not that interesting. She's skinny. She's like not one of the hot girls, essentially.
And I love it because I think she feels like she is above it. She feels like she truly doesn't care that she is not one of the hot, like, quote unquote hot girls. And I think you see that throughout. Like,
I think when she's doing apothecary things, that makes her really happy. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of a thing maybe for, I wouldn't even generalize and say all girls. I think this is all people. Like, a lot, like, I'm a very normal, plain looking guy, but I can look at Henry Cavill and be like, yeah, I wish I looked like that. Like that's a nice, that's a good looking guy. I wish I looked like that. So I think she's kind of in the same thing, right? Where she's like, she doesn't think she's ugly. She's just like, oh, I clearly am not as pretty as all these like courtesan ladies who are here.
I think it's courtesan, by the way.
Courtesan?
But
courtesan?
I'm pretty sure it's courtesan. But I actually think, like, and I'm not saying this is like a guy thing or a girl thing. It's like, I think it's just all people want to be perceived as attractive, but I just think Mao Mao does not. I think it's like not something she cares about, given that what she did to her arms. But
yeah, for sure.
We'll see that later.
Yeah. A little bit of kind of just a voiceover here. It's like, she's 17-year-old Mao Mao, insatiable thirst for knowledge, overwhelming curiosity, not to mention a budding sense of justice. These are all things that it tells us, but that we definitely are going to get in the rest of this chapter. No telling what fate has in store. It's like, oh,
I love the budding sense of justice line, because she is very much like in these first few pages, I'm going to stay in my own lane kind of a person, but simultaneously pissed off that her captors are getting paid. So I think that's where it started.
Well, and it's interesting. So this is kind of where we start the kind of the arc of the first 2 or 3 chapters here, where they think that some of these babies are getting cursed. Kind of the emperor, uses his. You're right. It is courtesan. His ladies, the what am I saying? The heirs that are birthed here have been dying. Like, I think they mentioned like 3 of them have been died. 2 died after, 3 died in infancy. And like Mao Mao is concerned about this. We learn about the 2 kind of rival, not really rival ladies, but we're going to see they're going to have a confrontation here in a bit. Li Hua, I think is how you would say that in Chinese way. Li Hua and Yokuyo. Yeah, and it's Mao Mao kind of, it's interesting that she knows how all this politics kind of works a little bit, but not all of it. So it's like, right now the emperor doesn't have an empress, so you might say that the mother of the crown prince possesses the most power. So,
and just for anyone listening, basically this is like the emperor has like a bunch of wives. Like,
yes.
It's not just these 2 in competition. It's like everyone at the royal court, like all the women are there for the emperor to have sex with. Essentially,
this is truly a harem manga. In the truest sense of, this is actually what the word harem meant. Harem, I think, is from one of the Middle Eastern languages, and it literally was these women, right? The women who the king has around him to use for pleasure, to do as he pleases with. But yeah, it's interesting because there's a little bit of Game of Thrones DNA in this that I like, where it's sort of like positioning for power, and there's a king, and the king's second in command kind of guy is Jinshi, who we meet in a little bit, who's helping him out, and there's all this kind of power. How do I say it? not power imbalances, but like power like struggles that Mama has to navigate of like who is this? Can I say this to this person? How do I treat these people? So I thought all that was really interesting.
Right?
Politics,
it's because these consorts, they have a lot of power being that close to the emperor, and I appreciate that this series is not about like imperial politics, but more so the internal politics between like consorts in like the court. That's like a cool perspective.
This is like a side story in some bigger, political thriller drama where the king has to confront other kings or other generals, or it's like, no. This is like literally just the king's concubines, like, and their little, their little section of the palace and what goes on there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, they talk about how the last emperor died, by everyone getting weaker. Something similar has happened. So maybe some seeds planted there for later. I don't know if maybe Mao Mao will get involved with the emperor or maybe the emperor's dad or whoever getting poisoned. But okay, yeah. So Mao Mao here gets told that the symptoms, right? This is kind of the medical drama part that gets in here. She's been given to headaches, stomach pains, and has been suffering from nausea. And Mao Mao, it kind of is implied that she like immediately knows what's going on. She's like, oh, like I figured it out.
And it's also implied in the same page that she cannot help herself from like looking into the mystery.
Yeah, she goes like, oh, what am I doing? And then she goes, I like this because this is kind of the final, one of the final pieces of Mao Mao's character. The last piece I get in, I guess, chapter maybe 2 or 3, but we talk about a character being compelling. God, I always just forget these. Compelling, competent, and protag, right? So this is her going out of her way to like take action protag. She's like, I'll see how they're doing. I'll see if this is something that I can help and affect. I'll take some power into my own hands. Proactive, yeah. Proactive, exactly.
I completely agree. I think she's all those things. She's competent, proactive, and like super intelligent. I think I love that you can never call her a Mary Sue because she's just not.
No, which is a real kind of beautiful thing. Maybe we'll talk about that at the end, but yeah, because she's very proactive. She is not perfectly intelligent, but is, very kind of powerful, intelligent in her little area. And she's very compelling, and she's not a Mary Sue, which is very, like I said, is very skillful storytelling there. So, in the court, we have, again, these two consorts, Liwa and Gyokyo, kind of having a spat where basically it's like, you've cursed me. This is very, I guess, 1500s understanding of medicine and science. So,
right.
It's interesting how they're framed though, right? Because the Liwa, who we know is the kind of the one that does not end up winning this in the end. She's like dressed in black. She has an angry thought on her face. And Gyokyo, who we know is kind of the quote unquote good one, dressed in a lighter shade, is, not, has a pained expression, but not a, like a scary one. So it was pretty clear to me in this who you're kind of supposed to like out of these two girls.
I appreciate that too. I don't dislike Liwa for this, it's like her son is dying.
Also,
it makes sense.
By the end of chapter 1, her son is dead. So it also does just suck. So
yeah.
But yeah, they say like the unit between them is trying to get them. And this is where she gets into the fun. Like it's the Ron Swanson, like I'm smart. Like I know more than you.
I know more than you.
Yeah. Her and this guy, the lead physician, every time she sees him, she's just like, this guy is dumb. I know more than him.
I like how like aggro and blunt she was in her own head. She's like, that
in her own head,
really
she's great.
Idiot.
Yeah. She's like, how do you not realize it yet after treating them? It's been like, months and months of this or whatever.
So in like, are they like the eunuchs, being a eunuch means that you're like castrated, right? I believe
a eunuch means you are castrated and no sexual organ, I think, right? A eunuch, I think, loses everything. I'll look it up. This is why we warn people. Sure. I don't know for sure.
I think they're just castrated, but I don't know.
Oh, no, just okay. Yeah, just castrated.
So I presumably it's so that men can be around like women without having sexual desires, that they're made eunuchs in this court, right? Like, so there's no like foul play or sexual desire when dealing with what the emperor considers his property, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's definitely mostly a sexual desire thing and a little bit of we can't just have these girls getting pregnant by other men all the time. And there's always that risk because it's,
okay, yeah.
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, I think it's supposed to be that. But yeah, so we don't meet him, but we see him here. This Jinshi, the kind of lead, I don't even know what his position is, I guess, but
he's a middle manager.
Yeah, basically. He's the area manager, he's the branch manager basically of the concubines.
He's like the Sherlock Holmes to her Dr. House. If those guys ever teamed up.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I didn't get that from these chapters, but I don't doubt that that's kind of where it's going. He's more of like a schemer and like, I'm going to use people to kind of get what I want or have fun or play games with them, which I guess Sherlock Holmes does a little bit. But
honestly, that was more so just something I said. I think he's more like, I don't know. He's also a smart guy, but in a different way. You're right. He's a schemer and he knows like the upper level politics of a situation.
Yeah.
Whereas Mao Mao is ground level, Yeah.
Well, and we'll learn about that the more kind of we see him, but that's the interesting dichotomy between these two is that he knows a bunch of stuff that she doesn't know, and she knows a lot of stuff that he doesn't know, and they kind of need each other because I don't know. I mean, their interactions are fun because where they have missing information and missing talents, the other has it, and so they kind of are intersecting in that way.
And we'll talk about it more later, but there's like a lot of parallels between the two as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So Mao Mao again going out of her way to be a protagonist and do something. She goes like, how do I warn them? Like, if only I had something to write with. We learned that she attached simple notes to rhododendron branches, which is some Chinese tree that I'll never know about. He left them for each of the consorts. He says efforts were in vain. We learned Liwa lost her son. She faded. She hasn't really been seen much, and her not much of her beauty remains. And so here we see, the name Gyokyo, and Jinshi here is like, my lady, what are you going to do when you find who sent this to you? And you can kind of see what's written on the thing that she left, which is like poison, do not, whatever.
A child died, bro. Quit having fun.
There's a little bit, I think, of like historical context that you have to have here, where it's like, man, in 1500, kids died a lot. Like you would have 10 kids and 3 of them would live to adulthood, like, or less. Like, honestly, it was probably less. So like, yeah, it sucks that her kid died, but I think that in the kind of historical context of this, it's like, well, it's bad that they're all dying, and we are rich and we should be able to save more of them, but I don't know. I think that everyone else around them is like, oh yeah, other people's kids dying is like, it's commonplace enough to be able to deal with it. So,
but I like Jinshi, but I also think he's just a politician. He doesn't really give a fuck.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure that too. He's uncaring in that way. I like that when they first kind of show him off here, everyone is like, who is that beautiful lady? And then it's like, nope, that's a man. I think actually Mao Mao notices, right? When she's like, wait, his shoulders are really broad, or someone does.
And this is kind of just her, like, this is just how good she is at observation. She has like a lot of these types of moments in the first volume that she just can tell based on physique and facial expression what like the other person is thinking. And uses that to navigate situations. But this is like kind of a taste at Mao Mao being good at observation. Yeah,
it's a good storytelling thing too, because it kind of reinforces that, when Mao Mao is thinking about something and kind of states it as I'm observing this, like that's a kind of like a fact. Like she's smart enough to be like, oh, wait, that's a man? Like no one else says that it's a man, but she tells us in her mind, and it's like that, it's a fact. So,
yeah. And that's why I really appreciate this part right here in the next page.
Yeah, his smart play here. I love this too. I thought this is a great moment.
She gets hoodwinked by being smart, because she gets hoodwinked by literacy.
Yeah, literally. Well, and it's another thing that shows that this is just such a great, like, maybe this is maybe my favorite moment of the whole first volume is Jinshi holding up this thing that says like that has written "You with the freckles remain here," because he's smart enough to know, like, whoever left you this warning, and we see later that, like, we know that it came from her dress, the little strands, and that they know how to write. And so he just, like, does that. But it also shows that like he actually knows it's her already, because like he knows that it's a girl with the freckles and she's the only one with the freckles. So it's like it's like a triple, like you got outsmarted. Like the smart girl got outsmarted already, and he's smug about it, and I like that. I love this moment.
Yeah, it's it feels like, it's weird to say, it feels like a little bit like Kaguya.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
where they're playing mind games.
Yeah, absolutely. And she like kind of makes the leave, and he's like, I thought I told you to stay put. He's like, I'm Jinchi. Like, come along quietly. And she's like,
I love how she's like a little chihuahua where she's just like,
yeah,
that she got touched in the first place.
There's a lot of moments where they like, the artist draws Mao Mao really small, and it's really funny. Like, because she's like, she's 17 and she's not that big. She's kind of a shorter girl already, I guess. But there's lots of times where they draw her like tiny or chibi.
Yeah. And
yeah, we get this nice reveal that it's like, oh, like, Mama gets to see that like the baby is saved, the mom is happy, and then yeah, we get Jinchi giving like, does this cloth look like it's from a maidservant's uniform? The face powder is poison. Do not expose it to your baby. It belongs to the uniform of a Shengfu maid, which is she's like a laundry maid, I guess, is basically what she does. Like all she does is wash clothes all day. Like your skirt wouldn't happen to be missing a piece, would it? And then we get kind of a flashback explanation here of how Mao Mao knows about the face powder. She's like, she like happened to see firsthand the fate that awaited the courtesans who refused to stop wearing the powder. They weighed their lives equally with their beauty, and for that they lost both. I was reminded of what happened to them. That's all. And she gets promoted. She's like, from this day, you'll be my new lady in waiting. She's like, huh? It's like, this is I think the last page of chapter 1. Yeah, is like, well, you might say I've got myself a promotion.
I'll say this. I really appreciate how many competent characters there are in this series so far, because it's not just Mao Mao and Jinchi. They're geniuses, sure, but I think the what's his consort's name? Gyokyo?
Gyokyo, yeah. Gyokyo.
Yeah, Gyokyo. Yeah. Gyokyo is better than both at working people. She's just a natural. You see her do it like multiple times across the volume, where she just breaks down barriers that I don't think any other character would have broken, Yeah,
with like a smile and a, the correct smile and being a pretty girl, and yeah, using that kind of for her. And she not in a manipulative way, but yeah.
I think definitely in a manipulative way, but like it's not bad, everyone's manipulative. I think she does it in a cool way because she has authority, but she never uses the authority. She instead acts like a friend or a confidant, and everyone just lowers their guard. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, I my little notes at the end of the first chapter is like, I like that we know that Mao Mao is likable, smart, helpful, kind, but she's also kind of scared and in over her head now, which is interesting. I like the guy MC. I like Jinchi, who is going to know more about the court and all that stuff and maybe help guide her. I said I like the mom here who listened, she listened to save the baby. I think that makes her compelling, and that she's smart and compassionate enough to not, like Mama mentioned, like some of the people that she saw die were, equated their beauty with their health, and she is clearly putting the health in front of her beauty, which I think makes her more compelling. So,
and they describe her character as like cautious and kind, and her line when they were discussing like who sent the note was that ignorance is a sin, and I think that informs a lot about like how I think this character thinks.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Cool. Let's go on to chapter 2 here. So chapter 2 is kind of a lot about setting Mao Mao up as a lady in waiting for Gyokyo. She has a bright, gentle personality. She's also wise and cautious. Not just anyone can be employed as one of her attendants. The favorites of the emperor must be greatly wary of those around her, or else no matter how many lives she has, they would never be enough. Yeah. Get a little bit of Jinshi's thoughts here. Great timing that Mao Mao saved the baby. She would never direct the person who saved his life. He's like, how could I put that freckle face and her poison expertise to work? So I like this because Jinshi is immediately thinking like, okay, I have, a little bit of sway over this girl. How do I get her to work? Like, how can I use this for my betterment?
This guy is clearly like how do I move my chess pieces? She's one of my chess pieces.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Game of Thrones, he's like a Littlefinger. He's like, for sure.
And,
I also like this, that he's like, it's like
a male femme fatale kind of a thing, you know, where he's using his hotness as a dude.
Yeah, and this is one of the funnier parts of him, is it's like he's kind of the schemer and the planner and working the politics behind things, and it's also like, and if I can literally like wink and smile at anyone, man or woman, and I'm hot enough, and they will help me, and I think that's fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I think his like kind of belief in himself and ego kind of parallels Mao Mao in a way.
They both know they're good at what they do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so we see that Mao Mao's like, she has private quarters. Yeah, here's where we see this. He's like, I'm not going to share my good fortune with the flesh merchants, she calls them, who kidnapped me. He's like,
that's a good line.
Yeah. I like here that she gets a little kind of like bored and restless of like, well, you know, I'm smarter than this. You know, there's more for me to do. Maybe I could be doing it. Yeah, she's like, hey, I finished putting my things. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. Leftover sweets, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, everybody looks at me with pity. And they're like, why? And we learn eventually, is this important? Foodborne illnesses, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, essentially they're looking at her with pity because taste testing is a very dangerous job. Yeah. One person got like minor illnesses, but the other person got paralyzed from it. Yeah, basically she's going to be a food tester for poison for this consort who has a child of the emperor's. So, and they're basically like, well, you know, you'll eat good food and then you'll die. Like that's kind of what that job entails. I like this one too. Is like, I love this. Is like, why is he looking at me like that? And he's like, that should do it for the come hither looks. He's like, he really does. The come hither looks is the funniest line in the volume. Oh yeah, that should do it. The come hither looks. He's like, I've smiled at her. She's in my pocket now. And she's just like, I do not care. And I like how his like glance is bouncing off her head. Yeah, it's just like bloop. The little it's like a blown kiss, but it's like an animation, but it's like a little star that just bounces off. Yeah. But yeah, so she ends up sort of eating food, blah, blah, blah. She's like, it's safe to eat. She's like, well, there's no point in having food. And this is where you kind of get a little bit more information about her history with specifically poisons, but also just kind of with apothecary work, I guess. He's like, when I still lived at home, I'd always be experimenting by testing various things on my arm as she holds a snake. Like, it's not a various things, Mao Mao. Poison fetishist. I mean, literally just like, it's this weird, if there's ever like a character who's like, I'm the poisoner, I'm the guy who does the poisons, they're all like, and I take a little bit of poison every day, so I'm resistant to it. And that's literally Mao Mao. She's like, yeah, I take a little bit of poison every day, I'm resistant to it. I love that this character you made up, his line is, I'm the poisoner. It's like a thing that exists in media where it's like, if you're the guy who like makes the poisons or does the poison stuff, it's like you're more resistant to poison because you poison yourself a little bit every day. Yeah, totally. I love how her dad is even like, oh, this is, I did something like, I should stop this. Yeah. Well, it doesn't help that she's like giggling like a mad woman here. It's like, he isn't like, ow, I shouldn't be doing this. But she's very like, thinking back on it, she seems like content. She's great. Slowly build up tolerances. Yes, infinite curiosity. It's also frustrating where she's like, well, you know, if they really wanted to have someone eat and test for poisons, they should probably get someone who's not resistant to poisons from having snakes bite them when they were a child. God, the Chinese names are going to be hard for me. The Japanese names are already hard to mix into speaking English all the time. But Hong Yang here is the head lady in waiting. Mao Mao here suggests, like, I suggest, you know, we use silver dishes from now on. And she's like, it's just as Jin she said. It's like, we purposely avoided using silver this time, you see. And she realizes that this is kind of a scheme to... so silver, I think, is like a disinfectant or something. So using silver dishes would mean that it would like kill some things on the I think it's something. I don't know. I thought it was like maybe that like a poison would like turn red in silver or something, you know? Like I don't know. I don't know why they want to use silver. I thought that
Antibacterial. That's where I was looking for. Yeah, silver has natural antibacterial property. That's why like silverware, like because it like so they purposely didn't use silver to see if she would notice and suggest it. It's implied here, I think, that Jinchi was like, don't feed her on silver, see if she notices and suggests it. And then it like turns out that he was right, and so she's
it's a competency
he called
test,
me
right?
on it. Yeah, essentially. And she passed it, but she doesn't like being manipulated by Jinchi, which is great. This is also good because you don't really know how to feel about the head lady in waiting at first, and then she kind of knows Mao Mao's history of getting kidnapped and slave traded to the Imperial Palace. And she does this little thing where it's like, oh, whoops, I dropped a vase, and that means that you'll need to pay that off, and you'll take it away from the money you send to your quote unquote family. And she kind of is like, oh, I'm actually like, she's a good person. She helped Mao Mao out here.
And so she got a different paycheck into a different account.
Yeah, basically.
For the food taste testing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's about the same. Like she basically gets like double wages and gets to keep the portion. The kidnappers get less. And then Mamo mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, it's like, oh, everybody looks on me with pity. And then here we see the other ladies in waiting helpers of like, did you see her arms? Like she tries so hard to hide it, like scar marks and burns. He's like, she must have been abused by her parents for being sold off to the palace, then condemned to the work of a food taster. It's like, I pity the poor girl. And it's like, well, you are incredibly wrong. She did it to herself. She's smart. She's intelligent. You should not pity her for this.
Well, it's funny because it's like a reasonable thing to suspect.
Yeah.
It's just that Mao Mao is very weird. And that's what like, so I appreciate that the other maids are all like concerned. Nice.
Yeah. I also like this, that it isn't like, she isn't immediately, surrounded by people who want to take her down or antagonists, right? It's like, oh, they're nice ladies. They're helping her out, maybe. So I like that
because it's like such an easy contrivance, right? To just make everyone hostile towards her from the get-go. I'm glad that they didn't. They just made people reasonable and well-meaning. Yeah,
it's one of those relationship advice things that I think applies to storytelling too, where it's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. And I like that this series is clearly not going to be a Mao Mao versus anyone or a Mao Mao and Jinchi versus anyone. It's going to be the people in the story against the problem, which is, what's the poison of the week? What's the problem of the week? What's the weird mystery? Which I think is a good angle, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too.
She just talks about kind of what her life is like now. She gets summoned for eating. And she mentioned, it's like, again, she's kind of bored, like just, I mentioned that she's kind of like, quote unquote, like from the streets, because there's like, she could be doing more. I think she's more used to a hustle bustle and the like rich lady, quote unquote, lifestyle of like, oh, just eat and that's your job and then don't do anything else. She's like, it makes her feel like livestock. So she's not into that.
She's not being intellectually stimulated and she's getting bored too.
Yeah. She's like, once I got to experiment on myself to the point of mortifying others and conducted a variety of new medicines as an apothecary, but all I've been able to brew since I got here is hydrangea tea, and she is very kind of sad about being cooped up. She also like has already noticed that the palace grounds has a bunch of useful things. If only I had a poisonous snake or something to mess around with.
What is your deal, Mao Mao?
Yeah, I'm going to turn into a pig.
This is very cute. I like this.
Also, I didn't notice that she's like still a pig in the left panel here too.
Yeah, she remains the animal for like a little longer than she should. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. It's like, it's Jinchi, he's smiling, and I love her expressions every time like Jinchi smiles. And it's like, there you go, smiling at me again. It's she just like absolutely dislikes this guy, or at least dislikes what he's trying to do.
Does that thing say cringe? Is she cringing? Is that what it?
Yeah, cringe. Thank you, translators. So Jinchi runs into this thing. Says, "It's like, hey, I was given these bao buns. Can you tell me what's wrong with them?" And Mao like looks at them and is like, "There's an aphrodisiac in these." She's like, "You can tell without even tasting them." He's like, "They're harmless, so like, please enjoy them in private." She's like, "Don't eat them in front of me." I love this. Like, did this cur just knowingly try to get me to eat aphrodisiac laced buns?
She fucking hates this.
She's like, I can't believe this guy. Yeah.
She makes the the consort laugh because she says that the guy who gave Jinchi the buns might visit him later.
Oh yeah. It's like he's like, he gave you these. He's gonna come by later and see how you're feeling. So get ready. And Jinchi here is like, I have a request for you, Mama. I was like, can I task you with making an aphrodisiac for me? And she like kind of ignores the fact that she hates him and that this is kind of a weird request. And she like gets very excited like for making medicine. It's like, I can't imagine why in the world this man would need a love potion because his powers are those of love anyway. But and I like this, like with ample time, the right tools and necessary ingredients, I can fulfill your request. And that is the end of chapter 2, which let's see if I have any more notes on it. But I wrote like about Jinchi's like, oh, this dude's a playboy.
Oh yeah, dude, I wrote the exact same thing. I said Jinchi's an absolute fuckboy.
Yeah. There was also a comparison early on in the chapter where Gyokyo, the sort of quote unquote good consort, has like only 4 ladies in waiting, while the bad consort has 10 because she's, like more of a slave driver, more, more servants for her, which I just thought was an interesting kind of comparison. So I don't know if she'll ever come back in the story. I assume she will, but we'll have to see more from her.
Presumably, I don't remember. But my speculation on that is I think she has 4 not because she's like a lesser consort, because she's stated to be the favorite, but yeah. I think she's just cautious about who she keeps around.
Yeah, I think like, cautious is also like, I don't want like more people serving me than I need. So
yeah, I think it's like she like clearly these people have been poisoned multiple times, right? So yes. I think she's like very reluctant to trust. And Mama is like she's a genius, but you have a read on her. You have like a very clear read on what she likes and what she doesn't. So yeah, I think it is easy.
Cool. So chapter 3 here. I love the thought bubbles. I think this is a carry on from the fact that this was originally written as a book and a light novel first, is that inner dialogue is really important in books and in novels of any kind. And so I really, really appreciate getting a lot of inner dialogue from the characters. Like something I really like about reading books that you often miss out on in manga is that you don't really know what the characters are thinking a lot of the time in comics in general. So I really like that we get inner thoughts of Jinchi here, where it's like,
I think it's very fascinating inner thoughts that we get in these next few pages from Jinchi.
Yeah, because here she's basically inviting him. Is like, hi, you're the hot guy. You want to come back to my place? And he's like, sorry, another time.
And right before this, right? He's like thinking that's maybe it's after, I don't know. But he says something to the extent of, my presence here is a test to their character.
Yeah, I think he says that a little bit, but it might have been before this. But yeah, he's basically like, I got propositioned by a civil servant, given aphrodisiac food by a soldier, and tied by off, invited to the private chambers of 3 concubines of varying ranks.
But he's effectively saying, with that line that like, my presence here is a test of their character. He's like, I'm so hot that I am like kind of a test. It's a challenge. Yeah, like they're worthy of the emperor if they don't try to fuck me.
Yeah, kind of basically. Talks a little bit about sort of like the concubines are determined by like lineage, beauty, intelligence. So it's like who you were born under, how smart you are, and how hot you are. So I'm sure a number of little birds trapped in this cage have realized that my presence here is itself a test of their character.
Yeah.
Posting me to the inner court for the sake of his selections, my master does have a rather mean streak. I started asking here, like, oh, okay, is Jinchi more like, is he maybe not a eunuch? Is he maybe more here as like he's working directly for the emperor and making the selections of his wives essentially. I wonder if he's kind of like not the same as all the other kind of like men working in this area. If he's like above them, I do think he's like branch manager essentially of this area. So
I actually remember this plot point, so I won't say anything.
Okay, cool. I'm interested to find out then. But
yeah.
So he talks about how he championed the 2 girls that we met earlier. And talks about like who's favorite, why he's favorite. All hordes of these women suitable for himself and the nation, makes them bear his offspring, and if they're no longer capable, discards them without a second thought, which we will come into play in the next chapter eventually.
I appreciate that he says that, like, yeah, Jinchi doesn't have like rose-tinted goggles about the emperor or his intentions. He is using and discarding these women due to his position of power, and Jinchi thinks it's cruel. Of course, he's right, but he is still doing his job, which means that he is a politician at heart, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, and I didn't really notice this now, but like his thoughts here are about chapter 4, right? One of the mid-ranking concubines is to be bestowed upon a military officer. So I appreciate that this is kind of foreshadowed there.
In chapter 4. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because we're just in chapter 3 here. So to do so, it's like, I may need to put that herbalist to more work yet. I love this part too. She might just turn out to be more useful than I could ever imagined. I'm sure she means to hide it, but the way she keeps glancing at me as one might a caterpillar. I've certainly met many before who've taken no carnal interest in me, but she's the first ever to look at me like that. He's like,
okay. He says on this page, I'm no masochist.
I'm no masochist.
Sorry,
Yeah.
But everything about him proves that he is a masochist. He's just
I
a
think
masochist.
so, yeah. I think there's a little bit of that, for sure. I feel like I've discovered a new toy to play with. Anyways, I like this too. He's like, he remembers I expect a visit from him tonight. And he's like, man, better safe than sorry. He locks his door. Yeah. So, Mama here goes, I think, she mentions here kind of like a little bit of like a greater goal that maybe she's chasing after, where talks about the idea of a panacea, which is like a cure-all. Let's go. Father told me doesn't exist.
That top left panel over there, does it not look like a mom sending her little kid off to school?
Yeah, this is like what I was saying, where it's like a lot of times they draw her like smaller than she should be. Like,
yeah.
Like I think she is like a shorter girl, like I mentioned, but yeah. So,
she's short for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But she mentions, I think on this in the next page, that she's kind of still looking for the panacea, which is, thing that most apothecaries would love to find. We meet another kind of our main characters, Gao Shun. He is Sir Jinshi's aide, so he is more likely to be a eunuch, I guess I would say. It's like, is he a military man? And again, it's like they draw her like looking way up at him and as like a smaller person.
I like this guy. He gives me real like friendly giant vibes.
Yeah, he's a straight man to some of the goofballs around him, which I think is a fun part to play. Yeah, he's kind of overly serious type of guy. And they bring her into the regular apothecaries area. And I really like the sort of the paneling and the layout here is great. She's like blushing and so kind of happy and impressed to be here.
This is the happiest she has been in the series.
Yeah, for sure.
Being in a lab.
Right here. Yes, definitely. I like how goofy she gets of just like touching everything and like being a gremlin about it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And then Jinshi's here is like, is that dance part of a cursed ritual or something?
I love this is like the only panel we see her love struck is when she is around a bunch of ingredients.
Yep. Doing something she loves, which I appreciate. She like asks Gao Shun to bring her something from like one of the top shelves, and it's like looks like an apricot. It has a peculiar smell, and she's like, oh, this is cacao. I was like, oh, cool, chocolate. She's like, if you need more, we'll have to get it. I'm sure you can find a merchant. And then here, this was hilarious when I read this, because I was like, oh, she's just making fucking like alcoholic candy as an aphrodisiac. Yeah. It's like milk, butter, sugar, honey, spirits, dried fruit, and fragrant herb oil. It's like, oh, she's making like what are the alcoholic cherry candy things called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like rum, like rum cherries or whatever they are. But I was like, oh, she's just making alcoholic chocolate, because in 1500s China, that would be crazy for anyone to eat.
I put in my notes here that this is just a quick segment on how to make horny chocolate.
Yeah, basically. I also like this is fun because we get a little bit more character out of the other ladies in waiting. They're all kind of like curious, and the head lady's like, get back to work. So I think that's fun. Powdered cacao's all like, yeah, she basically goes through and makes the chocolate. She's like, oh, I've only tasted this once before as a treat from one of my clients. And it's like one of her clients is like, yep, that is a lady. What's a nice way to call a prostitute?
That's not her client. I think that's like I don't know, someone like a mentor figure. She's the one saying, the courtesan is the one saying that she got it from one of her clients, and she's sharing it with Mama. Yeah,
well, because Mama used to work, quote unquote, in a brothel. So this is.
Did she work there? I think she was raised there.
Raised and worked there, I guess, both. Something like that. That is the past that she knows. So this is a brothel lady.
It feels like she doesn't know what sex is.
I don't know.
She does, of course.
But it seems more like she doesn't care. Like
she does not care. Yeah, she does not care.
It does not. Like there's no. When Jinji asks her to make a aphrodisiac, she isn't like awkward or weird about it. She's just like, okay, like I know what that is. Whatever, I know what to do. Like let me do my, let me work my magic.
She's like, hell yeah, I get to go to the lab.
Yeah, and so we get a bunch of steps of her. I wrote a note here. It's basically like, wait, this is a cooking manga all of a sudden, like, because there's like 6 pages of her like literally making chocolate and like she literally tempers chocolate in here, where she's like heats it up and cools it down to make it kind of solid again. And so after she like makes her aphrodisiac chocolate, she's like, oh, I'll make some bread cubes to soak up the leftover chocolate, and she's like, I can cool it differently.
Yeah, she made some sponge cake effectively.
Yeah, basically like chocolate, not chocolate cake, but like snack cakes. Like, the snack cakes chocolate on the outside. She basically makes those. It's funny because she comes back, and these are the 3 knothead ladies in waiting, and they've taken they've eaten the chocolate. This is a funny situation. This reminds me of Shokugeki no Soma for whatever reason, because it's like, oh yes, they ate food and it caused them to become horny and their clothes are falling off.
They had a foodgasm, just
like IRL food wars is what's happening here.
She has the most out of pocket line here in a second.
Yeah, I think I've got it. Oh yeah, she's like, it's fine. They didn't go all the way. She's like,
yeah. She pulls up their skirts and
she's like, yep, it's fine. She's like,
they didn't go all the way.
She's like, it's fine. They didn't. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. It's fine. But again, this is when I had to like, oh, I need to add a note to this, and like, this is actually an adult like manga, because like she like makes an aphrodisiac, lifts the girl's skirts, and is like, it's okay, they got horny, but they didn't touch each other. So yeah, it's like, they must have mistaken these for snacks. So.
And Mama is just very used to like sex, so she's like not bothered by it. But the head lady like
is embarrassed about it still. Yeah,
it like hits her on the head for being improper about it.
Yeah,
and to be fair, it was like so out of pocket. I love it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. she was just like, oh, she just okay. She just lifted their skirts and looked it up. They ask her, they're like, oh, what is this extra chocolate you made? It's like, my late night snacks. And everyone's like, wait, late night aphrodisiac snacks? And she's like, oh, don't worry. I built up a tolerance for alcohol and stimulants, so they don't do much to me. This is like, it's funny, everyone's reaction to like, imagine if you were like, oh yes, I made an extremely strong aphrodisiac and I saved some for myself as a snack for later. It's like, what? This 17-year-old girl? It's like, oh yeah, alcohol can be categorized as a type of medicine. The more sensitive person is to a particular drug, the greater the impact. Even this bread, which qualifies as an aphrodisiac here, would have little effect on the people where cacao comes from, I should think. So kind of making an effort of like, it's hard to think of in our modern age, but in past times where chocolate was not common, think about how incredibly wild, different, and, alluring, I guess, the taste of chocolate would be.
Yeah.
Considering it's like new and different and very luscious. And I don't know, I love chocolate, so I totally understand it.
And it's still an aphrodisiac in the modern day. It's just not like Viagra or anything.
Yeah. I mean, we have things that are 1,000 times more potent, so I guess we don't think about it. But yeah. This is where they mentioned kind of like with those looks, were to come on someone with a blush face, like sure to make anyone, man or woman, lose their head, because he's kind of
he's a hottie.
I suppose being so gratuitously blessed with beauty is its own kind of problem. And Mama warns Jin, she's like, a warning about the aphrodisiac. It's like, it's quite effective, so please only eat one piece at a time, and just too many. The increased blood flow will cause a nosebleed. This is a fun call out to anime trope.
Anime in general,
literally anime tropes. Yeah, it's like, there's no way it would actually cause a nosebleed. But we get a weirdly intense thing where it's like, thanks for going all the trouble. And you're like, oh, weird. And then it just like, it throws Momo off because she's not used to it. It would also not as affected.
Well, she's like deeply uncomfortable because she eats them, and she is like okay with it afterwards because he kissed the nape of her neck to steal one of the horny brownies. From her plate. So now that she understands the intent, she's like, okay, I see what you did. Yeah,
it's a little bit thing. And we see him here kind of licking his fingers like, well, just as long as no one gets hurt. And I believe that is the end of chapter 3. Let's see if I had any more notes here. I think that it's I think it's also Jinji trying to a little bit to like, he's exerting his power of sexiness over her to like try to manipulate her, but it like maybe works a little bit better there at the end because she clearly does get a little flustered. But
I think she wasn't even flustered. I think she was just shocked and annoyed.
I think definitely more of that.
But I also don't think he was flirting. Like you said, I think he was just trying to control her a little bit.
I don't think I don't think anyone we have seen on the pages so far. I do not think Jinshi is attracted or interested in any of them. I think all of the flirting he does is for his own machinations outside of.
I think it is set up to where Jinshi is interested in her, but just because of how much he likes the pain of her snubbing him.
Yeah. That
I don't think we see that for a while.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So chapter 4 is kind of the first 3 chapters are kind of their own arc of Mao becoming a lady in waiting, getting access and realizing that she's an apothecary, and then having her apothecary talents put to use to make this aphrodisiac. That's kind of our first complete story. And then chapter 4 here is its own little one-off story, which I enjoyed that it was its own kind of separate little thing at the end here to maybe give us more of an idea of what the series is going to be like going forward. So I appreciate that.
So I note that I read this like a decade ago. So my opinions from back then probably aren't relevant, but I remember thinking that this wasn't a very good chapter. But reading it now, I like it. I think my only issue is that I don't think it fits in one chapter.
Yeah, it's a little fast, I will say. I mean, it is 60 pages or whatever, or 40 pages, but yeah, it definitely feels a little concentrated. I thought the ideas were
beautiful, though.
Yeah, I liked it, but it is definitely very much. A lot of stuff is just kind of told to us at the end. I would say is kind of how it gets laid out, and it's very convenient that like Mao saw this exact situation back in her thing, but.
Yeah, exactly. There was some contrivances. But
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, some contrivances. Basically, there's there's a sleepwalking ghost girl. There's a ghost girl, and everyone's like, "Oh, you've realized what it is. It's just a girl who ghost walks or sleepwalks or whatever." I like I like that Mal was just like, he's nice enough, but like I know more than you. But he's like, I made a tea. She's like, ooh, we got rice crackers. She's like very like, oh, cool snacks. And she's like a cat here again.
Yeah. And I love that she stays she stays an animal one panel too long every time. Yeah. It's funny. I like
for all my rice crackers, she says, yep. This is the like, if I didn't make a custom thumbnail, this would maybe be what I'd use. Cause this is like a perfect encapsulation of these two's relationship, which is why Jinshi and Mao interacting is what I am looking forward to now in future volumes. Like I want these two on the page messing with each other and messing stuff up. I think this is fun.
I absolutely love how much she despises him.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like there's like literally zero affection or coming around in her eyes. Like she just hates him at the moment.
Yeah,
I don't know if it'll stay that way, but yeah.
Yeah, I like that she kind of calls out what we were mentioning, where it's like, instead of like, he doesn't seem to be attached to any one place. Instead, it's as if he's overseeing the entire inner court. Perhaps he ranks higher than a director then. There's a chance he might even be guardian of the emperor, but he's far too young for that. My guess is that he probably is guardian of the emperor and he's young and that just happens to be like that. But, well, I guess we'll probably find out later.
Well, I mean, he seems like a master manipulator. I think that's probably why, right?
I like it. It's even better now where Mao is like, oh, I'll just go in and assume he's the emperor's lover. Like, it's just like, that makes more sense.
And I like that it's not a real assumption. She's just doing it to be smug, to be petty.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You can tell by her face. Yeah.
Again, I like the interactions. Like, why does your face say you're thinking about something incredibly indecent right now? It's like, I'm not sure what you could mean. And so there's a little bit of Jinshi sends the master apothecary, I guess, away with like a long list. And again, Mao being as smart as she is like, oh, that tells me he's here because he wants something from me. So he's sending him away.
Yeah.
Tells about the ghost and sleepwalking. She says, well, you can't go sleepwalking with medicine. And he's like, is it not the very essence of medicine to cure any and all afflictions? He's like, medicine is my area of expertise. Thank you. She like turns away and he like speed teleports on the other side of her and grabs her chin. It's like, these two are like one of the things I liked about chapter 4, which I don't really guess I like the second half of it less, although I still think it's really good. The first half of it is this fun interaction. And the second half is like telling you the story that happens to this girl that resolves by the end of the chapter. So
I love these interactions with the two of them because like the intent of Jinshi's like looks have changed. It's not so much that he wants her to come hither, as he would say.
Yeah.
anymore. He's just doing it to piss her off now.
Yeah, he's playing with her. He's toying with her for sure. And she's very much just like, oh, I'll see what I can do. Again, we get kind of a mention like he's very masculine. He doesn't look much like a eunuch at all. Potential more hints that maybe some of the people who say they're eunuchs are not. You get a little bit of, eunuchs are more feminine because they kind of lose, I don't know exactly what the chemical balance is, but they lose something that makes them, their hair grows thinner, et cetera, et cetera.
It's their yang energy, dude.
Their yang energy. Yeah, I forgot that they mentioned that their yang energy is physically removed. Like, that's a nice way to put it, I guess.
But there's a eunuch fact on that last page that I was curious about. It says, because their appetite for sex is gone, their appetite for food increases, so they gain weight easily. Yeah. Is that real?
I don't know.
I have never heard that.
I will say that we have not done a whole lot of modern science on eunuchs because it is a thing that went out of fashion before modern science, I guess I would say. I'm sure that it still exists in kind of remote areas, but the most modern form of a eunuch is like a castrata, right? Which is something the Italian opera singers would do to have a boy whose voice wouldn't drop.
That's
to have them sing really high. Up.
It's so fucked.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different from a eunuch because it's done kind of when you're a kid.
It's insane.
But even a castrata, I want to say, I don't think that there were many. I'm trying to think if there's like a time when it would have ended mostly, where it's like, yeah, I mean, most of the stuff about castrata on Wikipedia is from like the 15 or 1600s. Like they say that there were some even in the 1900s, but like way less. So, yeah,
Momo could just be saying like science at the time, right? Like,
for sure. I think we're going to see a lot of that where it's like, oh yeah, the science at the time said that they worked like this. So, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I don't know. I personally do not know much about eunuchs. I probably learned more in these couple of chapters than I knew previously. I knew a little bit about castrata just from learning about opera and stuff, but
I just realized that like yang energy can be like removed like that.
Yes. It's interesting here that she's like, I wonder why he would have chosen the life of a eunuch. He's like, oh, I can't ask him though. Like you can't just ask a guy that.
Yeah.
I like this too, where he's this very kind of straight-laced guy. He's like, you don't have to call me miss. He's like, you're a much higher rank than I am. He's like, oh, should I call you Zhao Mao? He's like, Little Mao? He's like, a pet name. That's random. And then he's like, I ask you to stop looking at Sir Jinshi with the same disdain as one might an insect. It's like, oh, he noticed. I thought as much. It's like,
I love that panel because he looks so serious when he's saying it too.
Yeah, he's very serious. And I love this. Is like, upon his return, he told me how you looked at him as if he were a slug, and he seemed rather happy about it.
Masochist.
Yeah, for sure. This is hilarious too. And she's like shivering at the thought.
He's like, yikes.
He's like, I will be more careful from now on. It complicates matters when those with no immunities to Shinshi's charm see him in that state of bliss. There must be no end to the headaches of being his attendant. Now I was like, this guy is a bother. And here we get some kind of gorgeous panels of like, there she is.
It is gorgeous panels.
Yeah, the art in this is really good. I mean, it's not like, it isn't like, I don't even know how to say it. Like, it isn't like too flowery. It's just like kind of really straightforward, good art that I really like. There's a couple of, all the spreads in chapter 1 even I thought were really good. And this is another one that's, good composition, half moon behind her, and all that stuff. So yeah. And this is where the chapter just kind of like tells us what's going to happen to this girl. It's basically like, oh, she's promised to a general for his distinguished service. She once danced for the emperor and made a mistake, and she kind of locked herself away. I've heard that she's a very small vassal state type princess. She's never spent a night with the emperor. Mao then tells us about her experience in the past with someone who also sleptwalked and attacked I don't remember if it was like the head girl or something there.
Yeah, like someone trying to wake her up from sleepwalking.
Yeah, she lashed out and attacked them. She's like, after talks for her freedom broke off, she basically didn't sleepwalk anymore. It's like, I don't know. It's funny every time to me. Maybe it'll get old eventually, but it's just like Jinshi smiles and she hates him so much. She's like, hold it in, stay strong.
No, I love it. It's like the best running gag just how much scorn she has for him.
Yeah, and
but this is the part where I was like, it really shows off Gyokyo.
Yeah, Gyokyo.
Gyokyo's competencies, like in working people, right?
Yeah.
Because she approaches this like everyone knows Mamao didn't tell the whole story, and she gets it out of her by acting as a confidant, right?
And he's like, I would tell anyone,
just because she could very easily order her to tell her.
Yeah.
But
Mama works for this, works in indentured slavery to this woman. So yes, she could absolutely make her tell.
And I think it's like, this is someone who appreciates like honest discourse instead of people telling her what she wants to hear, kind of a thing. And uses that to like get info, like get relevant and accurate info.
Yeah, gets what she need out of the interaction, the situation.
Cool character.
Yeah. So basically, we learn that in Mao Mao's story, basically a guy had offered to buy one of the concubines, whatever that worked, for like a high price, and then she kind of sleptwalked, sounded she was weird, attacked a person, went into hiding, and then a second offer for freedom was made, which was less money, and it turns out that basically what had happened was a guy had fallen in love with her, but didn't have enough money. She was also in love with him, so she purposely sleptwalked, acted weird, attacked a girl, and then hid away to drop the price. And then the guy had a second dude come in and buy her and give her to the guy who actually wanted her. It's a very contrived, convenient plot that is exactly true for what is happening to the girl who's sleepwalking right now.
I think that this is probably the weakest part of the chapter. Is that it's very contrived. That Mamao conveniently has a one-to-one.
One exact one-to-one story of this is exactly what this girl is doing. I do kind of agree with you that, like, if this was 2 chapters and we kind of like heard a little bit more about the current day sleepwalking girl, then it lined up, it'd be like, okay, cool, I believe it. But it is kind of packed into this 4th chapter.
With that said, the reason I liked this chapter is not because of the contrivance here. That was not the best, but I think the outcome of the contrivance and kind of the message is pretty on point and kind of beautiful. I think it's in the next right here. Basically, Mama's explaining that the sleepwalking princess here intentionally messes up her dance move so that she doesn't have to lose her virginity to the emperor or have an heir with the emperor. And her childhood friend, which is the military man she's being given to, can work his way up the ladder to kind of earn the accolades to be a fitting partner, like socially, to her. So she has been practicing. She's actually good at dancing, but she's been acting like she's having sleepwalking episodes. So the emperor thinks she's like crazy and would never sleep with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Basically, and it's kind of mentioned maybe in like chapter 1 or 2, it's like, if you're not useful to the court anymore, the court gives you to somebody else. Like, I think that was in chapter 1 that it was alluded to that. And that's basically what she's doing. She's like, okay, she danced, she messed up, she never slept with the emperor, and now she's sleepwalking and acting crazy. Like, all right, get rid of that, I was going to say prostitute. She's not a prostitute. Get rid of that concubine and find me another one, is basically what's happening here. So,
yeah.
So yeah, basically, and it mentions here that she's like, she values her purity. If she had spent a night with the emperor, she would not have felt right, going to be with this guy who she actually wants to be with, blah, blah, blah. And Yukio here mentions, like, if I said I envied Lady Fuyo, would that make me an awful person?
And I think that I think go back one panel real quick. I think there's like a lot of good stuff here. I think the butterfly pollinating the flower is great. Good call. Because she values her purity and whatnot. And I think we get a lot on Gyokyo. I'm struggling here. Gyokyo. We get a lot on Gyokyo here because she says she envies the princess. And I think I'm curious about what part she envies. Is it the freedom? Is it the love? Maybe both.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's inherently one of many women who are disposable, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is like an interesting comment on how women are perceived in society as like sex objects, as disposable, as there to be sexy and to provide children to men.
Well, and especially in the story, the story is apparently, I mean, maybe it expands later, but for these first 4 chapters, it is about, these courtesans, their ladies in waiting, their service to the emperor, their children who are heirs to the throne. Like that's they're being used. I mean, I mentioned it a lot, but Mao Mao and all these other ladies are kind of essentially slaves, like, or indentured servants at the best. So yeah, there's not a whole lot. Yeah,
they're shackled by society, even if they're not indentured. Yeah, right?
and
even the head courtesan, Gyokyo, is like shackled by social bindings. You know?
And the people with the most power, even though they're eunuchs, are still men, right? Like the head apothecary still has power over Momo, and Jinshi is arguably probably. I mean, in these chapters, he's the most powerful man we see. So.
Totally.
That's like the emperor. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm interested if it discusses it more, or if it's just kind of used as set dressing. I'm not sure, but
in my view, I think what she envies is the freedom of choice that the princess had here.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that definitely and I think that it's because it's definitely implied that the sleepwalking girl and this guy who she's being promised to were childhood friends, right? I think it says that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think she is envious of like, oh, there's a man who loves me and who wants to be with me and is going after, whereas she might
there's actual love.
Yeah, she might be the emperor's favorite concubine, but that does not necessarily mean that he loves her or like wants to be with her. And so I don't know if we're going to get more of the emperor or not, or if he's a background character. I'd be interested to see how, I want to know more about everybody here. So,
and I love this subtle panel to show that they do both love each other, because he's happy. You see a small smile,
and she's blushing.
Cut off, and she's blushing. Yeah, so it's like it's a happy ending.
It is a true love thing. She escaped, being part of a harem into to be true love by her kind of own smarts. And he basically says it like, oh yeah, she looks really good, and danced on the wall where he knew that he was coming home from, so he would see her, which is kind of like a funny thing. But if love has the power to make women more beautiful, I wonder what it would cure. Which is an interesting kind of question from Momo at the end of the volume here.
It's like a very sweet thing, a very sweet ending. But yeah. That was volume 1.
Yeah, that's it. That's volume 1. My kind of overall feelings, volume 1 were, despite talking about sexism and slavery and all this stuff, I thought this was like a cute, fun, like well executed series. I think Mao Mao is great. I think Mao Mao and Jinshi are definitely this kind of standout interaction characters for me. Definitely the highlight. I am curious if there's going to be any kind of large overarching plots with little mysteries beside them, or if it'll just be little mysteries and maybe there's some progression of Mao Mao or not. I'm curious to see what the later volumes will bring, because I did like I mentioned, I did sort of like that chapter 4 kind of individual mystery. I didn't need more time to breathe, but I still enjoyed it. I still liked it. I still thought it was a good story. I'm curious. I thought it was good. Like I mentioned at the start, I knew I was going to like it, but I didn't know what I was going to like about it. But now that I kind of know that it's a character leading kind of mystery, well executed, kind of the characters taking the lead and everything, I think that has me really interested in more volumes of it. So,
me too. I'm curious as to see like where it goes, because truly it's been a decade and I don't remember anything. But I imagine it'll be more like mystery of the day kind of stuff with an overarching plot, kind of like weird example here, like how Supernatural does it, where they have like a through line, but they also have these episodic episodes weaved in where they do random mysteries or whatever.
That's kind of the way all CW shows work. Because you said that and I was like, yeah, that's the way like Arrow and The Flash worked, where it was like there's a week-to-week villain and then there's an overarching season villain, and then they get to the end of a season and it does that. So yeah, that's
I anticipate that, and I anticipate we probably get more internal politics being a factor.
Yeah,
because they haven't been so far. Like, we know they're present, but we haven't actually seen any of like the infighting that happens.
Yeah, between multiple consorts, or I'm thinking that this Jinshi guy's got to have a target on his back for some people, right? Like, I'm guessing that some people are going to move against him at some point, you know, and maybe Mao Mao has to help with that. But yeah, we'll have to see. I'm interested how political it gets, how sciencey it gets, or I don't know. There's lots of different cool angles it could explore that it seems very, very interesting. So,
this Jinshi, like, he works for the Emperor, right? He doesn't work for the ladies.
Yeah, he's like the I don't know what it says exactly, but he's like the Emperor's like, I don't know if it calls him like a right-hand man or what, but he's like the Emperor sends him there to manage the girls, basically, is what I got out of it.
Yeah. Got it. There was this one line where he is talking about the two consorts, and he was talking about like how the favorite one, I just forgot her name again.
Gyokyo.
Gyokyo is talking about how Gyokyo, hold on 1 second. It was like really kind of an odd thing that I was like questioning here. Yeah, he says that Gyokyo is wise and cautious and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he talks about the other lady, the one whose son died. And she's like, her disposition is second to none. And is he talking about her boobs? I'm not like quite sure what he means by that, because like, was he making like a joke, or right? Or was he talking about her actual disposition as a person? I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I don't know. He might literally be a veiled comment of like, yes, she's very kind-hearted. You know, Gyokyo is very kind-hearted and very nice, and the other girl is fucking hot. Like, that might be what he's saying.
I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and find it and see it, but I could definitely see that being the way what he was saying.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Cool. I think the side characters are all pretty fun. There's not too much there yet, but I think there's room for expansion. I'm guessing we probably get more of the other ladies in waiting, the other courtesans and stuff like that. The doctor guy, maybe. Yeah, I'm guessing he'll have some kind of ailment that he can't solve that Mao Mao will solve. That's kind
like any ailment. Yeah, he seems terrible at his job.
Yeah, maybe lots of ailments.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm curious. I mean, I definitely like this. I appreciate it. It was a good intro. It is very nice to read a monthly manga in a volume form, because you're getting kind of double length things, and they're tells a much more complete story. Reading month to month monthly manga is very difficult, I will say, because you forget. It's been 30 days. You forget what happened last chapter.
I know. It's a struggle I have with a lot of stuff, to be honest.
Anything monthly, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're right. It just falls off your radar because it's monthly, and sometimes you end up like losing multiple chapters because you forget the series exists. Yeah. And then you're like, what was the last thing that happened?
Yeah.
It's been one fiscal quarter.
Cool.
But isn't it kind of like, I don't know, like the name Apothecary Diaries really makes it seem like, and like this picture of Mao Mao makes it seem like it will be like a romance thing with apothecarying on the side, and not like a brothel mystery adventure.
This is the power of anime. Because this is probably based on the art cover of the light novel, would probably be what these designs are based on. And every girl drawn on the cover of a light novel, or boy for that matter, is drawn to be seen as a romance object, I guess I will say. You are not putting the ugly people on the covers of your light novels or anime. So, but yeah, I agree that she's presented more of like I definitely looked at it. I was like, yeah, maybe there's romance in it. I guess if I hadn't heard that there isn't romance on it, I would expect this to be a romance heavy series just based on that.
The buyers don't know that Mao Mao doesn't actually look like this. She looks pissed off 90% of the time.
Yeah, she's pissed off or transformed into an animal and 3 feet tall. Cool. Anything else, Scoutum, you wanted to mention or talk about with Volume 1 here?
No, I had a blast though.
Yeah, enjoyable. I'm excited to read more of this and get through it over the next year or so. So cool. Hey, everybody, thanks again for listening or watching. Next time you'll get an episode, it'll be Volume 2. Stick around for that. I don't know when that will drop, but please stick around for it. If you are, these will kind of be interspersed with our regular weekly podcast where we talk about currently published stuff, which you can find on this channel. And of course with Gachiakuta discussions, which will continue once about every 3 months once they drop a volume there. So yeah, be sure to check out the Patreon if you want to support what we do. You can get more book clubs of the year, the more money we get there. Check out Twitter if you want to see more thoughts. If you're a weekly manga reader, don't forget, check out the Weekly Manga Podcast on this channel. That's it, I think, for this episode of the Apothecary Diaries Book Club Read-Through. So adios.
See you later.
And don't forget to read more manga.